Panelists, here's your question. What is the oddest, most disgusting thing you've ever found in a sewer system or one of these grease traps? What's the yuckiest thing you've ever found out there? What should you do with that big pot of hot oil? I'm so excited, so thrilled to be doing another roundtable for NTech. So this is to hopefully clear up your fog problem. So clearing up fats, oils, and grease in your waste stream. If you've been to our roundtables before, you know I'm the moderator, Christine Gonzalez, Senior Project Manager, and Storage Tank Queen here at NTech Engineering. I'm thrilled on our panel that we've got 3 folks from NTech. So 2 of them are returned panelists. Ed Petrosky, he returns for his 7th roundtable. Jeez.
I don't even remember all of them. Jeez, I'm glad you're keeping track.
Well, he likes to talk, and he has a lot of good stories. So he's the NTech's Director of Technical Services with more than 40 years of experience. Tori Morgan's been with NTech for 1.5 years now as a compliance coordinator and senior project manager. And she has more than 30 years of experience, and she developed our online cork board called the Cork that has all sorts of good and useful information in regards to water and wastewater compliance issues. And we'll make sure a link gets sent out to all the attendees after this roundtable so you can check that out. Marcy Beggs, this is her first roundtable. She's been with NTech for 5 years as an engineering designer. Panelists know each other in different ways, but Marcy, you know Heath because he was your instructor, wasn't he?
Yep, Heath was my instructor at Thaddeus Stevens.
Awesome, yes. Okay, and our panels are so much fun because we love pulling in industry experts and our friends. So I'm happy to welcome Heath Edelman. He's a WET instructor. Heath, okay, WET, WET. What would WET stand for?
Water and Environmental Technology.
Okay, I thought that's what it was. He's at Thaddeus Stevens College and has 26 years of experience in the wastewater industry, and he was with NTech for several years as well. Eric Shearer is the collection system manager with the City of Lebanon Authority, and he's been at this for 11 years. And Chris Taylor is the supervisor of public utility at Palmer Township, and he has been there for 6 years. So welcome to my panel. And one thing I love to do is get a sense of our audience. So far, there's been nothing coming through in the Q&A. However, I've got a poll I'm going to release to the audience, and let me send it out right now. So I'll give you about 15 seconds to take a look at this. So it's aspects of fog. Essentially, what brought you here to this roundtable? What do you want to learn more about? Is it the key elements of a successful fog program, the types of fog programs? I'm curious, how do you know if you even need a fog program? So just pick one, pick your top one, and this will help us focus in on what's most important to you guys out there in the audience. So I'll give you another 5-10 seconds or so. And for me, this is like, I'm really taking a high level view because I didn't know what fog was until I came to NTech. In fact, I didn't even know you shouldn't pour oil and grease down your sink because I mean, Marcy was joking, but I'm like, it's waste. What else are you gonna do with it? Okay, so another second or two, and I will end the polling. And let's see what our audience is most curious about. So let's share the results. Looks like number 1 was the key elements of a successful fog program. Okay, good to know. And let's see, 2 would be best management practices. 3, and then, okay, so the types and the cultivating the relationships, they were both number 3. Okay. And I guess 2 people want to know, do they need a fog program? So hopefully we'll focus more in on the ones that are most important to our audience. And once again, we'll take Q&A, use the Q&A button to submit any questions you have throughout our roundtable. So let's kick things off. Key elements of a successful fog program. Heath, talk to me. What do you think about that?
Put me on the spot. Well, I mean, I kind of, when I look at it, it's a couple elements. The first thing obviously is when you think about sources of fats, oils, and greases, you have customers, residences, and lots of diverse sources, and then you have food service establishments. And so you have different approaches for both of those customer bases. Obviously, public education is really important for customers, and so I've seen some really good public education flyers and other methods over the years to reach out to customers and let them know, like, hey, like, this doesn't belong down the drain. So for the Christines of the world that didn't know it till they got to NTech, hey, don't put this down the drain. On the food service establishment side, that's a little more complex. Obviously, it starts with pre-treatment in the sense that those establishments usually are required to have grease traps. And sometimes that's half the battle, especially if you're trying to implement a new program, how you go back and implement grease traps at existing facilities that didn't have them. So having grease traps, doing proper inspections of those, proper records of those, and monitoring that's associated with it. It's a bunch of different things, but obviously keeping it out of the sewer in the first place is really what it's about.
Okay, Tori, what do you know about key elements to a successful FOG program?
Well, as you know, probably most of the people on this call know, FOG programs are kind of my passion. They're they can be a lot of fun. They're unique and special for any community that is looking to do one. But I found over the years, for the key elements for a successful FOG program are truly the backbone is an ordinance. You have to have a solid ordinance which provides you with the capabilities to go in and inspect the guidelines for what you're looking for, the ability to enforce if you need to enforce, all those things. But the other key element, I will say, and I think many people on this call, as far as my fellow panelists would agree, is communication. For a FOG program, it's all about communication. The turnover in restaurant personnel is literally weekly. I mean, you could go there, inspect them one week, and the next week it's a new person and you're starting all over again. So you have to kind of be aware of that going into it, and you have to have a communication and education program that really does cover that dynamic and be ready for it coming out of the blocks.
Chris, I see you shaking your head. What's your experience been with the FOG programs?
Like she said, just dealing with new people every day, and you think you got everybody figured out, and then they change. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't know, so you're teaching people. Sometimes you find a language, people speak a different language. That's also another hard one, but we get around it.
Now, are you actually out there yourself doing this inspection and training?
Yeah, that's a lot of what we do. Tori works with us on the ordinances and stuff. We go back to her with all of our information we find, but yeah, we're the guys out there teaching and checking on and trying to build a relationship with everybody.
Yeah, so with these relationships, I'm very curious, Chris. You said sometimes you go out there and it's all new people. So it's really your job as the owner, I guess. You've got to be the one doing the outreach, because they're not necessarily going to reach out to you. They don't even know about these traps and things sometimes. Am I right?
No, they don't know about it. A lot of them don't want to clean the grease trap. I think it's disgusting, but so we go in and teach them how to, why you do it, and also teach them to prevent things from getting in the grease trap. It makes it easier to clean the grease trap. So there's a lot of things that without even cleaning the grease trap, you can prevent to get in the grease trap by doing.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Heath?
I was just going to, and maybe this is sort of towards Tori because of the ordinance. And one of the things that I notice is that the whole grease trap thing is really unique. I think in our world, because now I'm going to get a frog in my throat. We have a whole nother entity of people, which are codes enforcement people, that are integrally involved in this. And it's kind of a unique thing for us because we're used to being on the wastewater side as authorities. And now we've got these sort of building codes people that we have to interact with. And sometimes that's I find it's one of the most important relationships to have. That, and of course the food inspection people as well. So there's these different groups that you kind of have to interact with that are not sort of the typical groups we're used to working with. So I don't know if you could speak to that, but it's kind of a unique element to this whole grease management thing. We're working with other departments in our cities or our boroughs that we don't normally work with, and trying to make sure that they are looking out for the things that matter to us on the other end of the pipe.
Ooh, excellent point. Yeah, Ed?
I'm so glad that Heath brought that up. There's a whole raft of regulations out there that already exist. And Tori's right about an ordinance. If you want to go in there and find somebody, you have to have an ordinance, okay? Or at least some method of establishing power at an authority level where you have the right to go in and enforce rules and regulations. But there's a bunch of regulations out there. If you have a food service establishment under the Pennsylvania Plumbing Code, you have to have an interceptor, a grease interceptor. And oh, by the way, things like laundromats need interceptors. Things like places where you might get a lot of grit down the drain need interceptors. And that's in the plumbing code. So again, it's not just that they're violating an authority rule, they're violating the Pennsylvania Plumbing Code, which is based on the International Plumbing Code. So that same code probably exists in all 50 states and territories of the United States of America. So again, there are other rules, and food service establishments, food handling places have to comply with local rules. It's part of their whole establishing a license program to serve food, that they have to have proper plumbing in the facility. Well, that goes back to the plumbing code. So there's lots of foundations to have the rules. The reality is it becomes difficult for guys like Chris and Eric because they got to go out there and do the policing. And if you don't police it, forget it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, Tori?
So yeah, absolutely. That's right. So what's important, I just want to emphasize about the ordinance piece, it's not, I don't want everybody to think that the ordinance piece is strictly for the enforcement side of it, because the ordinance is kind of the backbone and the guidance for what the expectations are for the program. So a specific FOG ordinance complements the plumbing code and like what Ed had mentioned, what's required of food handling facilities as far as installation of a grease trap. But what you can have in your FOG ordinance, your local FOG ordinance, which might not be included in the plumbing code, which isn't included in the plumbing code, is specific expectations for maintenance. And that's probably what is one of the biggest factors in a FOG ordinance that you want to make sure is available. Meaning, for instance, there's standards, basic standards out there. Not every community does it the same, but for exterior interceptors, those are your interceptors that are outside. They're usually about 1,000 gallons or more. The big interceptors, the minimum maintenance schedule on the standard on those interceptors is usually quarterly. Well, if you just go to a random restaurant with no program, most of them aren't cleaning them quarterly. You're lucky if you're getting them cleaned once or twice a year. Well, it's not really working if they're not cleaning it at a frequency that it needs to be for it to be in good working order. Interior traps, they're a beast in and of themselves. Interior traps can range from little teeny, 20-gallon tanks to, bigger ones, close to 100 gallons. And, in different ordinances that we've worked on, we've set standards for a weekly requirement for inspection and or cleaning. It depends on the trap, it depends on the community, but you want to set those standards in your FOG ordinance to complement the plumbing code. I want to just mention the plumbing piece of it. We are not, well, at least I don't know if any of you guys are, but I'm not a plumber. I'm never going to pretend to be a plumber. So you're right, Ed. One of the most important things, and Heath, one of the most important things is create that relationship with the plumbers and the codes department, because we don't size the traps. We don't set the standard. The plumbing code does, and the plumbers do that regulation. We work to complement those requirements. So I just wanted to emphasize that.
Okay, excellent. Now,
True.
Eric, I noticed you shaking your head a bunch when it comes to this idea of policing the people out there and checking on these things. What do you in the city of Lebanon do to make sure rules are being followed?
Well, we have a fog program. It's very infantile right now. It's very early. And we're kind of learning as we go. What you have to stay on these people. So in Lebanon, we've never had a fog program.
How
So all
come?
of a sudden,
Well, how
what's
come
that?
you never had one?
I can't speak to things that were in the past. I think, okay, so in my honest opinion, I think wastewater is particularly here. I think they think that there's a mentality, if the plant can handle it, it's fine. And I think the collection system has always come secondary. And now I think with population growth and running out of room to increase sizes here and here, people are now looking at the collection system and figuring out pre-treatment and maybe taking the load off the plant. That's just my opinion. I don't know if that's the case, but maybe Ed and Tori know better. I don't know. That's just my opinion. But as far as policing the people, so we're trying to culturally change them. So they have they've been doing this for decades, and they do it the way they've been doing it. And we know places that have had grease traps and they have removed them.
Oh,
So
is that like illegal?
it is. And then now, thanks to the ordinance, we have the power to say, hey, you're not in line, you're not compliant. You need to get your grease trap put in. And now, like you have to kind of handhold a little bit and teach them, but at the same time, you have to let them know that this is a real program and we're not going away, and you can ignore us all you'd like, but this is, so it's for us so far, it's been like a delicate dance, and we're still working out personnel to do this. So I'm kind of filling in.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
Basic.
curious. Like it sounds like it can be a lot of work. If you're
It's a
going
ton
out
of
there
work.
quarterly checking on things, like if you don't have a program, do you need to hire more people? Because everyone, and here's the thing, you're overloaded as it is. There aren't enough operators out there. I see Chris shaking his head.
Yeah.
Right. So there are companies that you can, like there was a different approach that we took where we tried. I think the mentality was that this is going to be pretty quick and easy. We just kind of want to get a grip on it. So we tried to hire an outside source to do the majority of the work. And we quickly found out that we weren't necessarily getting what we want. So we have to kind of scale it back. And it's in order to not mess up any relationships with our customers and stuff like that, we have to space it out, and it's going to be a lot more personal and human. And we'll just have to get people dedicated to this position
Yeah.
in the
And
future.
I think so many of us have seen over the years, it comes down to the relationships, which is why we're all here today, chatting with each other. So I want to remind our audience, we're taking questions from you throughout, and I just want to read a couple questions and comments that have come through so far. So this is from Chris Cope. He says, just a comment relating to multilingual township cities, etc. As Chris described, when I worked at the city of Allentown, we distributed bilingual door hangers with plastic lids attached for cans and each door hanger explained what to correctly do with cooking grease. It was a big success, and a large amount of our FOG program came from lower income areas. Very interesting. Thank you, Chris. John Higgins shares that in Baltimore City, we have a well-established FOG program for businesses, FSEs. Someone help me out. What are FSEs?
Service establishments.
Okay, thank you. Our outreach to residents has been mostly limited to an informal flyer included with municipal water bills. What methods have panel members found to be successful and can suggest for FOG programs to better connect and inform residents about the BMPs that they can implement in their own homes? Okay, so help me out. What's a B? These acronyms drive me batty. Tori, what's a BMP?
A best management practice. Those are a little bit, Chris had started to talk about best management practices. That's what we help educate our food handling facilities with how to avoid the grease even finding its way to the drain. It can be something as simple as posting signage above your sink. And maybe we need to do that for you, Christine, at your house, not to pour grease down your drain. Or have strainers in your sink. Make sure that the food waste, because one of the biggest things that I think restaurant owners forget about is when they think about grease. It's so funny. I know Marcy has joined me on quite a few inspections, and we've seen, you'll go in and they'll say, I have no grease. I don't do grease. I got no grease. I said, well, do you use dairy products? Do you have sauces? When people think of grease, they think of chicken grease, chicken fat grease or frying oil grease. That's not the only thing that creates grease. So we try and educate people on what else is generating grease. And, that's super, super important. So those are best management practices. And I think to answer the question on the home is, how do you educate people, residential people? I've seen most communities do it through their website, through an education program, or through flyers that go in their water or waste sewer bills.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. There's ways to do it with the flyers, website, posting on social media. It's like, how do you measure the effectiveness? But I guess you'd measure it by, does your amount of fog go down? Ed, comment?
Yeah, let me just a couple of comments here. And, Chris said it, Eric said it, they're going out and they're inspecting these facilities, and you got to do it yourself. I know from dealing with Eric, what are there, like 200 food service establishments that you might have in Lebanon?
Yeah, we wound up chopping it a little bit, but that's close, yeah.
Yeah, 200. That's not too bad. One guy might be able to do 200 inspections a year. Okay, thorough ones. He might even be able to hit them twice a year. But again, without that policing effort, you're not going to get them to wholeheartedly comply. Okay, because they got more important things: cooking the food for the customer, serving it to the customer. Okay, that cleaning that grease trap is so far down the list, it's ridiculous. So unless you're going out there and enforcing it, and again, that's 200. That's pretty much a staff person, keeping the records, doing everything else, going out there, setting up appointments, or doing it randomly. Then you got, if there's 200 of those customers, how many residential customers there are, and how much grease could there be in a residential customer? Where'd that turkey oil go again, by the way? But anyway, in my recent past, I've had the experience of operating systems with grinder pumps, where the municipality would be doing the maintenance. And we'd go out to pull a grinder pump, and I want to tell you, some of those grinder pumps were so coated with grease, we couldn't get it through the access hatch on the sump. Residential is a huge contributing source, and you can do the public education. You're not going to hit everybody, okay? And there's a tremendous source of grease there. And the point that I'm making on this is, as good as you are with doing your inspections, you're not going to be there to watch every person every day. And you're not going to get 100% compliance through education with the residential, because there's going to be people who don't know better. There's going to be people who don't care. And there's going to be, they're charging me $60 a month for this damn sewer. I'm going to use it. I don't care. So don't let a fog program be the substitute for your sewer cleaning program, because you're still going to accumulate fats, oils, and grease in the sewer. You're trying to keep it to a workable level. You're still going to get fats, oils, and grease down to your treatment plant. And if there's an issue down there, the fog program is going to help, but you still better know how you're handling fats, oils, and grease in your treatment plant and what impacts it has down there. So fog programs are good. They're important. They're certainly good if you've got major fog producing industries and commercial establishments in your town. But it's got to be this whole big picture of the whole thing is what I'm getting at, because you're always going to have some of it. You're just trying to alleviate the massive problems that can occur. The blob of grease, as Christine so aptly put in her emails for this thing, that blob of grease that's blocking your main sewer, and now it's backing up into 10 homes and overflowing a manhole into the street. Now you got a major issue. That's what you're trying to really control with the fog program, at least in my opinion. You're never going to be, I don't think you're going to be anywhere near 100%, but if you can get You know, if you could measure a reduction of half, I think you'd be doing great.
Marcy?
Yeah, something that kind of ties into the policing aspect of things is, you want to maintain good records of the interactions that you have with your industries. I think as Tori mentioned, there's a lot of turnover at these restaurants. So someone that you speak to one week might not be there the next week. And if you have good records of kind of the conversations that you've had with previous managers or previous staff, you have the inspection reports, easily accessible for everyone on your team that's going out and interacting with these people. I think that's really important in the long term to kind of establish a good database up front where you can keep track of all of those interactions and all of that information, so it's easily accessible for everyone, dealing with these people face to face.
Yeah, I'm thinking like sometimes if you go to a place and you can name drop, so several people at an organization, and someone may be more consistent and maybe they're longer. Chris or Eric, I don't know if you've had this experience where you do find like there's a lot of turnover, but maybe someone is there more often. Has that been the case at all, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. Another question that came in, Bill Ross posed, how can we best avoid massive fog and wipes, disposable wipes clusters in our pipes? I think educating our customers would be the best option. And actually, I'm curious, Eric and Chris, have you guys seen like these disposable wipes been around, gotten really big and problematic past 10 years or so? What would you say, or even longer?
Yeah, I've seen them since I started. We have them in our pump stations. We find them. Yeah.
So are they like, since there's more of them out there, are they making fog issues of clogging your pipes even worse?
We
Yeah,
found
so-
a lot with the grinder pumps. The grinder pump will be sucking up a dry wipe as it shuts off. And then as the pump starts to kick on, next time it calls for it, it can't get the wipe out of the grinder. And we found that's been the problem with a lot of our grinder pumps.
Does that like break them? So you need to buy a new one, or you just need to?
No, I just got to pull it out, and
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that's
Well,
fine.
more
Just
work for
doesn't
you
have
guys,
enough
right?
power to start to get it going.
Got it. Okay, Eric.
We've actually gotten rid of all of our grinder pumps, so I really don't have issues with that. And we pre-treat the collection system now, so there's less grease hanging up on those wipes. And I actually send a lot of personal letters to people about when we inspect the connection of their lateral. I'll send them a photo of their lateral for roots or for wipes. And then when they call, we also explain to them, how they get caught on their cast iron. And so we do things like that. Wipes, they're bad, but they haven't been a terrible thing for us. Sometimes they cause clogs, typically with the grease, but not really by themselves.
Okay. Eric, talk more about these photos you're taking and you're sharing them with your customers.
Yeah, so when we inspect the sewer, we mainline, we CCTV the main line. We in the city of Lebanon are not responsible for the lateral, so I don't do a lateral inspection, but I do the connection, the Y. And then, if I come by your house and it's packed with roots or it's damaged, or I will cut that photo out and include it in a letter and I will mail it to you. And I will recommend that you get a plumber. And if you're experiencing these problems with your drain, and this is why. And also we have after-hour calls. So if you called and the operator took your call, he could look up your lateral and say, oh, well, no wonder they're clogged. They're full of roots. And it helps eliminate call outs. And so I try to do it for everybody. It's a lot of work and it's just me, but I do make a point to do this and document it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I like that. Other people may do it. So what's the benefit? What do you get from that? What is your relationship better with the customers out there?
I think so. So typically if you have roots in your lateral, 9 times out of 10, there's going to be roots in the main. So I'm going to root control it anyway. and then that foam application will go up into your lateral roughly 10 feet. But as a homeowner, you have no idea what's going on with your lateral. You have no idea what's underground. So maybe to help you, I honestly believe that most people want, you don't want to back up in your home. So if I can let you know that, and then they call me, explain, some people are confused because it's a positive thing, not a negative thing. And then when you explain things to them, then they typically get it fixed.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Heath, did you have something more to share about fog, clogs, and the wipes?
No, not really. It's just, fat soils and grease are a funny thing when they get in the sewer system, because they don't want to be in the sewer system. So they're either going to grab the side of the pipe or they're going to grab solids. And so the further they travel, the bigger they get, and sooner or later they come into contact with something else. And the next thing you know, you got a big mess. So they're kind of, I think, Eric sort of pointed out, they're kind of a catalyst to a big set of problems. And it's almost reminiscent of a snowball. You start out with a little snowball, and the next thing you know, it's pretty darn big. And it's funny the way fat soils and greases behave. And that kind of goes back to what Tori was saying about the fact that these aren't just, free oils. These are other emulsified products and other things that contain, oily substances that they just kind of get the ball rolling on some pretty big problems. So.
Okay. Tori, did you have something?
Well, I'm super excited because I want to share. Can I share can you tell I get way too excited about this stuff?
Share, come on, get it
I'm
out.
gonna share.
Let's go.
A little tip and trick that we kind of figured out through experience that helps with a successful fog program. So as we mentioned in the beginning, the turnover at restaurants is so frequent. But what's not a big turnover is the hauler and the hauler contacts that they use. And you deal with, I'm sure, can you guys hear me? It looks like I'm okay. Good. When are in like a plaza or a big development, so there might be a landlord that's involved with all of that property. We have found that we get a huge amount of support and success when we deal directly with the haulers and with the landlords to help educate and bring the restaurants into compliance. Example, if we have a plaza that has 5 restaurants in it, and we go through and we have a problem with maybe 1 or 2 of those restaurants, we bring the landlord in. The landlord has a vested interest in that property. They don't want backups. They have to pay for it. So we bring them in on it, and they're right on top of those restaurants to help get them back into compliance. I think Chris can speak to that, at length. We have had so much success in dealing with landlords and haulers. And to Marcy's point with keeping good records, what we do is we document every single hauler that's used in a community. And then when we're educating the facilities, the restaurants, we also educate the hauler. We say, hey, hauler, these are the expectations in this community. Understand them, know them, because this is what we're inspecting when we go there. It's a win-win. I can't emphasize it enough. Don't stop at just the restaurant. Expand that education to the landlords and to the haulers, because you are really going to get some positive support when it comes to them.
Okay. Yeah. And speaking of this documentation, Marcy, I'm wondering, you've been involved in helping Palmer Township with their fog program. How do you track all these things? What are we doing?
So in Palmer Township, in the beginning, when they were starting out their program, they were using a spreadsheet, which was fine. In the beginning, there wasn't too much information to keep track of. And then they were using an online SharePoint folder where they kind of, kept all of their files and documents and everything. And at the beginning, like I said, that was fine. And as it sort of grew and they went out and did more and more inspections, and they had more documentation, more correspondence that they had to keep track of, we found an online program that we use to keep track of all of that. So we create a page basically for each of the businesses, and that keeps all of the contact information. We dump all of our files in there, inspection reports, We use that to schedule their inspections. And then it also keeps track of any emails that are sent back and forth between the business and our team. So it's kind of one place to keep track of everything. And I think it's really important that everyone on the team has access to that database and that same information, so they can kind of stay on, keep up with what everyone else is doing and all of the correspondence that's going back and forth.
Okay, yeah, and Chris, I know when it comes to these programs, computer stuff, if it's not easy to use, it's like, screw it. I don't have time for this. So how user friendly is this program you're using?
Super easy. So if somebody was on vacation or whatever, didn't do that fog day, usually Wednesdays are our fog days. So some guys might be out of the fog day for a couple weeks, and they go back to a facility to check up on them or whatever the case may be. They go right on their phone, log right in, look up the place. They can see all the emails that Tori sent or Marcy sent, where we stood last time they were dipped, what was said, so you can pretty much figure everything out and reprogram your brain on whatever was going on at that specific place in a couple of minutes just by looking over.
Oh, is it, can you get it on your phone, or what do you
Yep.
guys use?
Yeah, we have it on our phone. When we do a report and we go out and then we bring it back, we do it on our tablet at the office. So we don't necessarily put all the information in our phones. We just use the phone strictly just to look at things, look things up, how to get a hold of somebody, who's the hauler, and things like that.
Got it. Okay.
One other thing I wanted to add was, not only does the fog program help us and getting the grease to us, it also helps the restaurant. There's been times where the hauler wasn't doing their job, they weren't cleaning the grease trap properly, and sorry about that. They weren't cleaning it right, and we would go back and we would clean it or check it, and they were over capacity. And we're like, how is this? We dipped them a week ago and they were full. We said clean it, and here what the hauler was doing is they were coming in and they were cleaning the top, not the bottom, and it was bringing them over capacity. So we've also helped them get the good haulers to come in and keep them up to the right job.
Okay.
So
So the haulers didn't always do the right thing?
correct. Yeah.
Oh, this sucks.
Sometimes it's not only the business that's doing the wrong thing. Sometimes it's the hauler, and
Okay.
they're paying for that, so they want the best job. And that we've already had it where restaurants called us and said, "Hey, can you come back out and dip it? We want to make sure they did what you asked them to do." So
Oh, cool. Okay. So how often do you clean out a grease trap?
well, we have a 25% rule.
Yes, glad you mentioned that. Good.
So
What does that mean?
it has to be under 25%. So our inside grease traps, the small grease traps, we have an ordinance that says they need to be cleaned weekly. And then our outdoor interceptors, they need to be cleaned whatever. And that's the other thing we do. We go out and check them, and we'll kind of see where they fall and where the interceptors need to be cleaned. If their business isn't that it needs to be cleaned every month, we'll move into a 2-month cycle, or that's usually up to Tori, but we try to make it so, yeah.
Good.
The
Tori,
20, yeah,
how
the
do you guys-
25%. Yeah, the 25% rule, just for clarity, is an industry standard as well. If 25% or more of the capacity of the grease trap is comprised of the floating grease at the top or the sediment at the bottom, it's considered at capacity and needs to be cleaned. So we've used that standard as part of the inspection rule for many of the programs that we work with. That's what Chris is referencing. So, for instance, in the Palmer site, I'm not sure, Eric, you guys might use it too. They utilize the Dipstick Pro. It's a glorified sludge judge. I don't know if everybody on the line knows what a sludge judge is. It's a long tube. It's a core sampler, basically. It's all it is a core sampler, and you drop it in the tank. It tells you how much sediment's on the bottom, how much grease is on the top. It's a simple calculation. If it's 25% or more, the trap needs to be cleaned. But even if it's not, there's a minimum standard of maintenance written into the ordinance weekly for interior quarterly for exterior.
Okay, yeah. Any other comments on this? Tied in with this, we got a couple questions from our audience. Tim Boyd asked, what are some successful elements of an inspection program for commercial operations, particularly grease traps? I feel like we've sort of covered that. From Tim Lester at NTEC, should the authority specify the required detention time for grease interceptors traps, i.e. like 20-minute detention time? Tori, did you just shake your head no?
No, we're not plumbers. That's up to we would not make that call. In fact, you don't, like, that's the one thing we do in training 101 is if someone says you go into do an inspection and they say, well, is this grease trap big enough? Or is the detention time in this trap long enough? That's up to a licensed plumber and a codes department. That's where Ed and I were talking about that relationship between those organizations and a successful program. And I think Keith, you had mentioned it too. You need to have that. So if there's anything questionable when you do an inspection with the working capacity of a trap or an interceptor, we advise them. We say, you must notify a certified plumber or the codes department to get this, verified that it's in proper working order.
Okay. Yeah. Ed, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just going to say two things. It is about detention time, but the real calculations are a little bit more complex. Okay. And again, you as the authority do not want to be doing that calculation for the restaurant. And I will give you an example. I do work both sides of the street here, okay? I work for authorities. I also work for industries. And I had an industry that followed their permit to the letter of the law. And the municipality told them that they had to install 2 Green Turtle, and that's a brand name, Series GS 2500 grease interceptors on their system. And then there was grease getting out into the sewers. And it said, the permit further said, you shall clean them on a regular interval. And they cleaned them on a regular interval. And oh, by the way, the grease was hauled to the municipal treatment plant. And when they came and made a big stink about it, I said, wait a minute. They did exactly what you told them to do. Well, their grease trap's not adequate. I said, no, you permitted that they should install 2 of these, of this model and this size, and that's what's there. And you got the records on the cleaning because it's hauled to your plant. And you've never said to us that's not often enough. So as far as I'm concerned, you didn't properly regulate them. So don't sue them. By the way, that was not a one lawsuit by that municipality. That was a settlement for far less than they wanted. So again, don't ever get yourself into a position. It's up to them. They know their flows, they know their loads, they know what they're doing. Let them hire a consultant and size that interceptor. Don't ever get yourself in a position where they're going to say to you, you told us what size.
Okay, excellent advice. Yes, Eric?
I was just gonna, I just went through this actually. Ed would probably know it's the grocery store, but yeah. So he asked me if it was, if he needs a bigger one. And I said, I don't know. You're gonna have to consult someone. He goes, well, maybe they didn't give me a big enough originally. And I said, no. I said, maybe you have different things going on now than you originally did, which they do. They're doing all manners of frying and cooking. And I just simply said, you'll have to contact someone and get it resized. You'll, obviously have to talk to zoning because it's separate from me. But I said, right now, this is what you have and you're gonna have to clean it weekly. So that's part of the deal.
Good story. Excellent. Okay, the panel doesn't know this is coming right now, but we're going. If you've done the roundtables before, we're going to play a little game I'm calling System Sewer Survivor.
Oh, good Lord. Oh my.
So, all of the panelists are stuck in the sewer system. And who is that? Leonardo, Da Vinci, so the little turtles in there. So
Michelangelo.
thank you. I don't,
Way
all
to
I know
go,
is
Eric.
I know
Yes.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live in the sewer. So question to the panelists, and then we will
need pizza.
have our audience vote on who has the best answer and gets rescued from the sewer system. So panelists, here's your question. What is the oddest, most disgusting thing you've ever found in a sewer system or one of these grease traps? What's the yuckiest thing you've ever found out there? And then we'll let our audience vote. So Tori, what's the yuckiest thing you've ever seen out there?
To go first. Oh,
Ah.
goodness gracious. All right. Well, it's not a yuckiest thing. I'll share the yuckiest thing that happened. So Chris is already laughing. So we were just recently at we did a grease inspection at a restaurant. I'm not going to give out any names. This was Marcy's going to know who I'm talking about immediately too. This was an ongoing problem spot. And finally, they installed a new grease trap. And we hadn't been back there. And we went back to do a follow-up inspection. And we were there. And we got the approval to open up the trap. So we opened up the trap. It was an interior trap. You know, it was pretty loaded with grease and it wasn't pretty. And one of the guys kicked the bolt for that you put in the middle to hold the trap lid on, happened to accidentally kick the bolt into the trap. And he looked at me and I said, dude, you got to get it out. And he's like, well, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. And they tried fishing it out for like 20 minutes with like a little scooper thing. Finally, he looked at me, he goes, I'm just going to do it. And he just rolled up his sleeves and he went arm deep in that thing. And when he pulled it out, oh, whoa. I mean, it was like, I have no words. It was a spa treatment beyond spa treatments. And I think
so an arm and a grease trap. Good story.
Ooh.
Excellent. Okay, Ed, can you top that one? What's the yuckiest thing you found or seen?
Well, along those same lines, I had an inspector in one of the sewer systems I used to operate, and he had a pair of gloves. Now, he didn't have these gloves or these gloves. He had gloves that came right up to his shoulder. Okay, and that's what they make those gloves for. Okay. And I went out there one day and we had a clogged sewer and a main line, and he goes down there with his hip boots on and the water's like almost knee deep, and he reaches down, he has gloves on and he reaches down and then he pulls his hand up full of spaghetti.
Oh,
And he said, hey, let's follow this back up the sewer. It's lunchtime. Okay, that's my disgusting story.
Excellent. Okay, Eric, what's the yuckiest thing you've seen in the sewer?
I don't know. I didn't see it in the sewer. I saw it at our bar screens. It was a dead squirrel, and it was bloated to about the size of a beagle, I guess, in the compactors.
oh.
So that was, yeah.
Okay, I'm glad there's no pictures, thank God. Okay, Marcy, what about you?
Luckily, I haven't been involved in too many unbearable situations, but I think grease in and of itself is pretty gross. This wasn't a firsthand experience, but we had a client recently who told us that they had a blockage and they pulled out a tube of grease from the sewer that was just like 20 feet. This tube that was like 20 feet long, and he called it a sausage link. And breakfast for me has just never really been the same since then.
That's actually good, isn't it?
Not when you love sausage.
Sorry. Heath, what about you? Grossest thing you've seen?
I think probably this is kind of weird on my part, but I'm always endlessly fascinated by facilities that don't have any screening and they get mop heads in their tanks, what I call mop heads. If you ever get a chance to cut one of those open and inspect the microbiology inside them, it's kind of fun. It's a little bit gross, but there's all kinds of fun worms and organisms
Okay.
that live
All
inside
right.
of mop heads. So
Oh, fascinating yet disgusting.
good if you ever
Cool.
get a chance.
Okay, I hopefully I will someday.
Only he would think of that. Like,
Wow.
he probably made it part of the class for his students.
Luckily, not while I was there. Thank you.
Chris, what about you?
I can't say I've ever found anything in a grease trap, but a lot of the ones where we went to when we first went there to teach them about the fog program, and we've, oh, do you clean your grease trap? Oh yeah, yep. We open it up and there's just a thick black layer of grease and flies and all kinds of things growing on top of it, and the whole kitchen smells bad. And we're like, oh, maybe we haven't cleaned that one. So
That's good. Okay, so I'm going to put this out to our audience to see who should be saved from the sewer. So I'll give all you guys 10 seconds to pick whose story was best or yuckiest, who made you cringe, or whose stories did you just like the best. So, but I love these stories. This is what keeps me coming back, because you never know. We've all seen different things, and that's the fun of being in our industry, because you get to save these stories up for these fun opportunities like these roundtables and see what's out there. So another 5 seconds for our audience to keep voting here. And a reminder to our audience, we're still taking questions and comments from you through the Q&A button. So please keep submitting them. We love hearing from you. And I'm going to end the polling right now. And let's see who will be rescued from the sewer. Share the results. And it looks like it is, by a hair. Eric, you are being pulled out of the sewer.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What do you win? What's he win? Like
I'm out of the sewer, Tori.
Accolades, and I'll post it on LinkedIn so everyone can be like, ooh, cool.
A long pair of gloves.
a lot.
I think you should get him a nice package of sausage links down at the local
Oh,
butcher shop.
Yes,
Wow.
maple cured.
It's so disgusting. Well, thank you so much to our panelists for sharing your stories. And I'm going to go back to Q&A from our audience.
While you do that, Christine, could I share one final thought?
Go ahead.
I just want to mention to anybody on the call today that is or has been ever considering a FOG program, there is not a one size fits all. And always remember that. FOG programs, that's what's kind of unique and different about them. You can design them to meet the needs of your community, whether that means how much you inspect, enforce, charge, permit, all those things, document. You can self-design that to what your community needs are and what your financial needs are, and grow from there. And that's a great thing. So always keep that in mind. And a program that you run solid and can be of huge benefit to a community in keeping your collection system clean, keeping your liability down with your insurance agencies for backups in homes, and also gives you extra points with the DEP and EPA when it comes to pre-treatment that's being done in your system. So, just something to consider.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Eric?
I'd just like to add to that. For us, like I said, our FOG program is pretty new, and although we know the basic knowledge, it's invaluable to have someone with a lot of experience to help you get started, be there. They know what they've done, in the past. I mean, you'll figure things out on your own as well, but for that, to help you and to be there while you're going through this whole thing is really important.
And
So.
actually something, we don't rehearse these roundtables ahead of time, but we do get together for 10, 15 minutes just to go over the format of them. And something Eric had mentioned and actually mentioned a little bit today was this idea of pre-treatment. So Eric, can you talk a little bit about the pre-treatment you do in your system, where it goes, what it is, and how it helps with the fog?
Yeah, so I do a lot of TVing, mainline sewer inspections. I document a lot of grease. We pretty much, it's funny, those grease and clogs, they line up. I use a lot of GIS. They line up in maps where FSEs are, and apartment buildings or older neighborhoods, or you get the gist. But anyway, we use a company that we basically pre-treat our sewer system with. We add bioorganisms on a monthly basis and monitor 150 manholes. And the biological product that they grow basically eats the grease. It grows on the walls of the pipe for approximately 600 feet. It eats the grease and changes the composition of it. And we tried a pilot program at one of our, well, it's an industry that we have here. They're notorious for grease, and we have siphons there. We tried a pilot program there, and we ran that for 6 months. And we used to have to jet it all the time and clean it. I haven't cleaned that since last October, 2 Octobers ago.
Oh my God.
So that was pretty much the trial for us. We also have our pump stations inoculated, and we added some aeration to get the DO up. But so far it's been pretty successful. I kind of look at it as it's kind of like root control. I mean, I'd really like to, it's like a Band-Aid, but it does help with other things.
Mhm. Okay.
So we found a benefit to it.
Okay. Has anyone else been involved in any sort of treatment or pre-treatment projects like that?
I will say this, a lot of times on the same lines now, Eric, he obviously, they've done a lot of research. They know the enzymes and the biologicals that they're using. I caution, oftentimes you'll hear restaurants say, oh, I'm going to use these enzymes and they're going to eat up all my grease and I'll never have to clean my grease trap. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Many applications, all it does is dissolve, takes that grease out of suspension only to put it back in suspension downstream. Not the case with what the product is Eric's using. Eric's is much different, but there's a lot of other products out there that don't do the same thing that Eric is talking about. And they try and sell them to these restaurants and say, oh, well, you don't have to clean your grease trap so often if you use these enzymes because they'll just disintegrate your grease. Well, yeah, they'll disintegrate your grease. And then, right down the line in our main line, it's all coming back together again. Very different than what Eric's doing. I don't want to confuse because Eric's program is very effective and makes sense. And it's the right type of biological. But there are biologicals out there that people try to sell that are not effective. So, like Eric and the team at COLA have done is they've done their research, they've done their pilot studies, they know it works, and that's very, very important.
Okay, yeah, good point. Okay, another question from our audience. This is from Diane Beatty, who says for the established fog programs, how are they funded? Is there a fee for the FSEs? I'm expecting that she'll need to create a staff position just for fog inspections. So Tori, give us some insight. Who pays for this stuff?
Well, it's it's a really good question, Diane. I know Diane and I have talked numerous times on many different things. So it depends on your community. Some people have fog programs where there is no fee structure in place, and they don't necessarily have permits. I'll tell you, we don't have permits in the Palmer program. Many other programs, we don't permit them. We go by the ordinance requirements. People will put the permits in place and maybe have a flat fee that covers the cost for somebody to go out there and do an inspection. Now, if you do sampling, that's another fee on top of that. So you have to do a cost analysis and decide, how is this program going to be most effective and funded? So it depends. There's not a one size fits all for the fee piece of it or for the permit piece of it. You can have a fee, you can have a flat fee, you can have a fee that's commensurate to what it costs to do an analysis if you're sampling. It depends, but certainly something you can do a cost analysis on.
Okay, yeah. Any other comments on funding these programs?
Yeah, let me just say, having worked over the years with a lot of different systems and authorities where they charge, a lot of times people will go to restaurants as a category and they'll say, oh, it's automatically 2 EDUs plus 1 EDU for every 10 seats or something. And the restaurants say, well, how come it's so much? Well, if you're running a fog program or dealing with the fog, you've got an additional cost because it's a food service establishment. Okay. So that may be a little just random and off the cuff to say, well, it's automatically 2 EDUs. But every municipality has the right to establish rates and charges for various classifications of users. And if you can document that you're spending X dollars on a program simply because of fats, oils, and grease in food service establishments, you have a right to do some calculations and say, how should that be spread across this customer base? That is totally within your purview in establishing rates and charges. Now, politically, council members, board members of authorities, township supervisors may not want to do that, but realistically, if you can show there's a cost and you can attribute that cost to a group of users, it's within your right to recoup that cost from those users.
Okay. Eric, I saw you shaking your head. Did you have any comments about that?
Yeah, so look, we've discussed this before, like here at COLA, we've discussed this a lot, because right now, financially, like with COVID and everything else, we don't want to burden the restaurateur, but at the same token, it's not right for regular customers to pay for that restaurant who's making money. So there's a fine line. And so we do have a permit for them. And we are like, I'll just give you some examples. If you're a Chinese restaurant, we're not picking on you, it's just the type of food you make, you're going to require us to visit you more often. So in the infantile stages, we're still educating you and trying to get you to where we want you to be. And then once we do get that, I have an inspection called a performance inspection. And if we need to go there monthly, we go there monthly and do that performance inspection, and everything is fine until you don't comply. When you fail, now you're going to have a compliance inspection, and we're going to charge you for that. So that's one of the things that we discussed, and it's a nominal fee, but hopefully it keeps, we don't want to charge you. We really don't. But for us, it's something we've been thinking about. And like in a perfect world, of course, it would pay for itself, but it's not going to. Our main goal is to keep the grease out of the plant, pretty much, because we save a lot more money that way.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, one of the other, our original poll to our audience, they had said, we talked about a bunch of this stuff just sort of inherently through this discussion, but something we sort of touched on was best management practices. And one thing I want to share with you guys, best management practices, a big part of it seems to be educating, whether it's educating the food services, educating your clients. And this is something that was super sweet. Christine Wagle, the executive director at LCWSA, which stands for, I think it's Lycoming County Water and Sewer Authority. She's, when she got this invitation for today's webinar, she sent this over to me. She's like, this is so cool. She put this together. It's got, pictures of the turkey, and she sends it out with their notice about, I think, inspecting grease traps. So it's, nice poem. There's more to it where they explain what's going on. But it just seemed like, something different, something colorful, a nice personal touch, and something that is once again different and different than just a page with words, with boring words that you don't want to read. Give me a picture, tell me a story. And that's a good way of engaging clients. So help us out. What are some other best management practices, Tori, that you've seen out there? What works?
Well, I would say this is like a compilation of best management practices, but one of the methods we've implemented at a variety of programs is, and I know this is going to sound silly, but believe it or not, it works, is we took our ordinance, any best management practices documents, which would include maybe general guidelines on grease trap cleaning, do's and don'ts, maybe a template for signage above a sink, or a template for documenting when you clean your grease trap. We took all those documents and we put them in a bright green binder and the name of the restaurant on the front of the binder. And when we went in for our initial inspection and met with the store owner or the manager, we said, listen, this is your grease Bible. They giggled a little bit. Everybody kind of laughed. And we thought in the back of our heads, oh, is this really going to work? Or is this going to go right in the trash? I can pretty much guarantee every single place we've given those binders to, which is over 100, if we go back, they all have that binder, and they all reference that binder for everything they need. So if we say to them, well, there's best management practices, use it for your training of your new employees, make this part of doing business. It's part of that education program. It's part of connecting with the restaurant. And as people turn over at the restaurant, it was interesting because, you'd go to the manager's office and we'd be like, do you have a green binder? Now, maybe that person didn't know what the green binder was, but I'd be looking up on their little shelf. I'd be like, oh, there's your green binder. Let's pull that out and talk about it. And, I think Chris could probably say more to that and Marcy, because they've done inspections where we've handed those out and gone over them and then gone back and we've seen them again.
Cool. Excellent. And other best management practices, what have you guys seen that worked out there? Who else or does nothing work?
Well, I think there's a best management practice that I can never convince people of, and it's not just to restaurants. I go to industries. I'm dealing with an industry right now that makes tofu, and they only have like, I don't know, 10,000 pounds a day of BOD in their wastewater, not to mention all kind of fats, oils, and grease. And one of the things I always say is don't get the grease in the water in the first place. Okay. If you take that pot, that pan, and you scrape it in the trash, get that stuff out of there. I personally live on a septic tank. Okay. I don't put a frying pan or anything like that near the sink until it's wiped out very much with a paper towel and thrown in the trash. Now, of course, I realize that if I clog my drain field with fats, oils, and grease, I've got a problem. So I'm very vigilant. But a guy in a restaurant, unless he's the owner of the restaurant, he may not have that same concern. Okay. The other thing in a lot of places is we're more focused on the production than we are about where the waste goes. And those are really the hardest concepts to sell. And I'm talking about having dealt with this with national sized corporations and just trying to get the mentality across that dealing with that wastewater, that fat oil, that grease is every bit as important as maintaining your quality control of your product. But that it's just such a hard thing to get across. And unfortunately, this is why we have these permitting processes, these rules and regulations, these going back and visiting, these fines, and so on and so forth to get it through their head. I had a client, and he's on the phone, he's on the line right now watching this, and there was let's just say a fast food establishment in their community. We all know who I'm talking about. And they went in and there wasn't no schedule filled out on when the grease trap was last cleaned. And he said, oh, I'm a new manager, give me a break. I'm just trying to learn what's going on here. And the guy who did the inspection was at the meeting and says, geez, should we give him a break? And I said, you know what? I was at that restaurant last week at that place with the name. And I said, that goddamn Big Mac tasted exactly the same as it did last year when that other manager was there. I said, he learned how to do that, so he should learn how to clean the grease trap. But again, it never reaches that level of importance. And that's the challenge.
Yeah.
We can, and Tori, I appreciate that they hold on to the binders, but when was the last time they opened them?
Well, let me tell you, I'm relentless.
Oh, I know.
I am relentless.
Yep.
Let me say
So-
right now, Your Honor, I testify, she is relentless.
Yes, Marcy.
Just had another best management practice idea is the strainers in your sinks, which I know a lot of people just kind of scoot them over to the side because then they don't have to keep cleaning them out. And you don't
Right.
really think that that's contributing to your fats, oils, and greases, but that does end up in your grease trap as sediment at the bottom of your tank. And that does contribute to that 25% capacity. So
Really?
those strainers in your in your sink, in your kitchen, and then just dump it into the trash can instead of letting that go down in the drain. I think that's helpful.
Dude, they don't teach us this stuff and how to have a house.
I'm gonna make you a binder, Christine.
Yeah.
Give me a binder. See, we're up against time. There's still a few questions out there from our audience, but in case anyone has to leave at 3:15, I want to share. If you enjoyed today's roundtable, please keep in mind we try to do these, every month or so. Trying to set one more up for December. It's beer with an engineer. Nobody's perfect. It should actually be beer with an engineer and an operator and seasoned professionals who have really good stories, but that's just a really long title. And then coming up in 2022, we'll do some more on I&I, the water regulatory updates, always a lot of fun. We'll do that in the spring. I love doing stuff on tanks and the supply chain roundtable that we held a couple weeks ago. Very well attended, lots of very good and very important information was shared. That video will be up on our website in the next day or two. We'll send the notice out to everyone who's attended these roundtables in the past, but we definitely want to do another supply chain woes one. So if you want to see how to sign up for future roundtables, as well as view past videos, you can go to our website, www.ntecheng.com. Across the top, you'll find a menu with resources and drop down and look under roundtables. A huge thank you to my panel from NTech, Ed Petrosky. Thank you for coming back for, I don't know, was it number 7, number 8? So many roundtables and so much knowledge and wisdom. Tori Morgan, thank you so much for coming back and your passion for these FOG programs. And Marcy Beggs from NTech. Also, a big thank you to Heath from Thaddeus Stevens College. Got Eric Shearer with the City of Lebanon Authority. Love hearing from you guys out in the field and what's it really like out there. And Chris Taylor with Palmer Township. Also love hearing the operator stories. So if you're interested in getting a PDH certificate or an operator CEH, please send me an email. And if you're an operator, send me your license number and we'll make sure we get those out to you. So I'll leave this up for a moment, but panelists, I know we still had a few questions coming in for the audience. And let's see, actually, Nick O'Halloran, he's out in our Pittsburgh office, and I thought he had asked a good question. So he said, we've been talking a lot about collection systems, but I'd like to hear about the treatment aspect. So when this fog gets to the treatment plant, what ends up happening? Why is this really a big problem? So Ed, talk to us.
Yeah, actually, I put my hand up before because I saw Nick's question and I did want to address it. Fog can be a very big problem in a treatment plant. Besides the fact that you get these so-called grease balls, or it can do other means of clogging, the pipes, so to speak. It can actually affect the biology. There is a type of filament called Microthix parvicella, which thrives at this time of year, believe it or not. And part of what it thrives on is grease, fats, oils, and grease. And if you get it in your treatment plant, God help you, you'll probably never get rid of it. If you're lucky, you will manage to control it to not affect your operation. So yes, fats, oils, and grease can have an effect on the treatment plant. The same thing as in the sewers, clogging pipes, clogging, sludge draw off pipes and clarifiers, which Eric can well attest to down at Lebanon. But, besides those clogging issues, it can in fact affect your biology and your ability to settle in clarifiers. So
Heath, what have you seen?
Well, just to key off of what Ed said, because Microthix is a really big deal. Particularly in areas where BNR is so important. I mean, if you look at how our treatment plants have evolved, we've taken away, in many cases, primary clarifiers that were able to remove grease. We've extended the detention time, the sludge age in the plant. So we favor these organisms, and then we give them the food that they like, which is fats, oils, and grease. So, some people are like, wow, we never had this problem before. Now we have this problem with our new system. And there's some truth to that in the sense that it's kind of a perfect storm. Fat, oils, and grease with these organisms that have longer that like longer sludge ages and the fact that now we don't have primary clarifiers, it all kind of works together to be a real problem. So there's definitely municipalities up and down the Susquehanna River basin that struggle with that, and have really ever since they've gone to BNR type models or BNR type plants. So it's a definite challenge.
And don't forget, Heath, we had BNR requirements in the Delaware River Basin long before the Susquehanna River Basin, and those folks struggle too. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. We had a comment from Vibhakar Patel, who says send a brochure with water and wastewater bill once a year. The best way for residential customers to dispose would be to put it into a container and put it out with the regular trash. So thank you for your comment. And let's see, any other comments and questions from the audience? I think that wraps it up. So want to reach out to my panel one last time. Any final words of wisdom for our audience? Tori, anything we didn't cover that would be helpful for them for their FOG programs?
I'm sure we didn't cover tons of things. I could talk about FOG for hours. All I can say is if you have any questions, don't ever hesitate to call any one of us on this call for experience and advice or whatever, or just to bat ideas back and forth. We'd be happy to discuss it. So It's been a pleasure to be able to share experiences.
Cool. Yeah. Ed, final words of wisdom.
I said enough.
And we appreciate it. Eric, what about you? Any final words for our audience?
Just good luck. And I definitely think it's worth the effort. So.
Good point. Yeah, and actually, one thing we did not get to. So Eric, help me out. If you don't have a FOG program, how do you know if you need one or not?
We definitely do. So earlier in the very beginning of this roundtable, there was a viewer who said about lower income. I think that has a lot to do with it. We have a renter culture where I live. We also have a Latino culture, which is different, from where they come from, and a lower income. So the quality of food is, maybe it's different.
Okay.
So at our plant, Ed can attest to this. We have a lot of grease. You can clearly see it in our clarifiers. It affects things downstream. We do a lot of jetting. We do a lot of cleaning in the plant, a lot of maintenance. So it's gotten a lot better, but it's still an issue. So.
Okay. Can the panel speak to this? How do you know if you need a FOG program or not? Tori, talk to us. How do you know?
I think that the way you would determine whether or not you need a FOG program is, are you having problems in your collection system? I mean, that's the source primarily. Are you having clogs that are the result of fats, oils, and grease? And where is the location? Do you have hot spots? Do you have areas of concern? Determine that. And then ultimately, there's a cost associated with clearing those blockages. And that gets passed on to the users. So there's a cost benefit to having an effective FOG program. Plus the fact that, like what Ed had mentioned, and we talked about the impacts to the treatment plant. Now, many communities don't have a treatment plant, so they're not necessarily looking at that piece of it. They're only looking at the collection system piece of it, and that's fine. Or you might have both, but the collection system is where it starts. If you're having problems in your collection system, that the source is fats, oils, and grease, there is something you can do about it. That's when you want to consider a FOG program. And again, I emphasize, a FOG program isn't a one size fits all. You can design a program to meet the needs of your community, and certainly something to keep in mind. So it's not this huge thing that's overwhelming and there's no way you can do it and you can't afford it. You can design it to make it fit into the needs of your community.
Okay, excellent. To sign off, or go ahead, Heath, a comment on that?
Well, just to think about it, because sometimes the question with that is, how do I justify it? And just keep in mind, and Ed will weigh in on this too, but under the Municipalities Act in Pennsylvania, you have to have uniform and reasonable rates, right? And so back to what Ed was talking about, I mean, if you've got businesses contributing huge organic loads that are costing the system a lot of money, those rates are not being equitably and uniformly applied across your rate base. So it's not fair to the other users, quite frankly. So you know, that's it boils down to that in many regards.
Okay, excellent. So Heath, any final words for our audience? Any final words of wisdom?
Keep it out of the sewer.
Tied in with what Ed has said multiple times. Marcy, what about you? Anything we didn't cover today?
I would just say, you know, if you're starting up a fog program and you have your ordinance, just know your ordinance when you're going out and doing inspections, and that kind of gives you the confidence to know what you can require the businesses to do and kind of how to interact with them. So just know your ordinance and be confident in the rules.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, it's a great place to start. Okay, Chris, any final words of wisdom?
It's a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it. We had 5 houses back up because of a restaurant was dumping grease, and we got the fog program in place, and we've had a lot less back blockages since we've done that. So, and we know the good parts and we know the bad parts, and we just work with it as we find it.
Excellent. So it sounds like a success story already. That's cool. Okay, great. So a huge thank you to our audience. We loved hearing from you, your questions, your comments. When you sign off of this roundtable, there is a quick survey. We always like hearing from you as far as if you enjoyed it. It's completely anonymous. I will have no idea who says what. So did you enjoy it? What did you get out of it? And any ideas you have to make these better, and other topics for roundtables in the future, because they're all about you. They're all about what you need and how we can help you with your troubles and struggles out there. Thank you to our panel. You guys were amazing. I learned so much, and I'm sure our audience did too. And I always sign off on these by saying magical things happen when you bring together passionate people. And you're all clearly passionate about fog, particularly Tori. I had no idea.
It makes me so happy.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful holiday. We will see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.